right. Well, firstly, thank you to everyone for making time this morning after a very long night of karaoke. I know it was very difficult for Sandeep in particular. But yeah, I'm thrilled to be joined today by Sandeep, who's one of the founders of Polygon and can speak really effectively to the tech and the go-to-market especially, as well as Mike Blank, who is a very storied veteran of the gaming industry and is helping lead the gaming charge and has a very long career from EA. So I think to kind of start things off, it would be really interesting to talk about how you're thinking about partnerships at Polygon. You've had some really, really high-profile ones. Starbucks comes to mind, Reddit comes to mind, Doritos, in fact, comes to mind. How are you thinking about partnerships within Korea?
Yeah, so as you must have, like anybody who's following Polygon might have seen that we have been very particular and very relentless about our mission to take Web3 mainstream. And even though like the niche Web3 use cases like DeFi and NFTs and let's say some part of gaming, Polygon keeps performing at the top 3, top 2 levels on that also. But we have always thought that the real mainstream like Web3 real adoption in Web3 is going to come from mainstream. And obviously we have Korea is one of the biggest gaming ecosystems. And overall also enterprises are very open to adopting Web3 technology here. So some of the biggest names in Korea, like you would see like 60-70% of some of the biggest builders that you keep hearing about, they are building in Web3, they are building on Polygon. You have like SK Telecom and Nexon, which is one of the biggest gaming companies in the world. NeoWiz, probably the first company who started like 20 years back, they started gaming in Korea. And so many others like Lotte Group, this, that, like all of the, or most of the like large level adoption that you see in Web3 space, a lot of people are using Polygon. So we definitely are very interested and, working very closely with this ecosystem. Mike has played a very big role in that. And Mike, you want to elaborate more on that probably?
Thanks, Sandeep. I think one of the main words that comes to mind when I think about Korea is innovation. And the innovation that occurs in this country is remarkable. From a technology standpoint, from a partnership standpoint, and our aspiration in working with Korean companies is because of that shared love of how we can innovate together. Even to build on, we've worked with so many different enterprises here, as Sandeep mentioned, Nexon, NeoWiz, SK Telecom, Lotte Group, Kakao, you name it. We've had an opportunity, and we feel grateful to have that opportunity to work with Korean companies. And I think we're both, the aspiration is to help bring, as Sandeep said, mainstreaming what Web3 can offer. And the use cases that are being deployed here cover the gamut of how we can evolve gaming to a world that Web3 is additive, where we think about infrastructure, how we think about, I guess I could go on, but literally Korean companies are covering virtually every facet of Web3 experience. And as an infrastructure provider that we are deeply embedded with companies here and globally in order to further the aspiration of what Web3 can offer.
Well, let's explore the mechanics of one of these partnerships a little bit more. How's it start? Are they coming to you saying, there's this specific problem we want to solve, help us understand why it's Polygon versus everyone else? Are they saying, we want to do something innovative in Web3, help us figure out what that is? How's it kind of start off?
Mike said that I think that innovation is in the DNA, and they see that this Web3 is the next big thing, in the internet story, after the mobile devices and in between, like VR has been very big, and they see that the Web3 is very big. So many of the brands and large institutions, they want to have these Web3 use cases like having NFTs as loyalty points and all those things. Like that's one part. And then on the other side, like Korea is one of the largest geographies for games. And for gaming, the use case is very, very straightforward, very, very clear that you can have these gaming assets on blockchain and all that stuff. So games are very, very clear. And in fact, like we keep seeing such innovative kind of work that games are doing here in terms of like having NFTs, multiple NFTs. You can create your avatars with locking multiple NFTs. You create a new NFT and all those things. So for gaming, it's like already very clear, like a lot of Korean companies and they are already far ahead. And enterprises also are very bold in using some of these NFT things like ERC20 tokens for some of the credit, like K-pop. Like we have like huge number of K-pop brands using NFTs and other forms of ERC20. Like Mike, we were discussing yesterday that you can actually maybe Mike will elaborate more that particular use case. So they have these innovative use cases. They come to us. They are looking to choose blockchain. They already know what they want to do, and then they see that where most of the other people are building, and obviously Polygon.
And actually, I'm curious. Before we get into that, when you're having these discussions, who are you talking to? Right? Is it marketing? Is it an innovation team? Is it a product owner? Is it engineering? What's the mechanics of that look like?
All of them. I mean, just to go back to your original question, how do these companies, how do we discover and or engage with projects that we see that are happening in the ecosystem? And I think it comes from all angles. There's a distinctness that's happening in Korea, though, which is there is a very deliberate approach here. And in the vast majority of companies that we interact with in this region, they know where they're going. Either they understand that the future of the internet is going to be based in part or in whole on something related to blockchain tech, and therefore they need to build the underlying infrastructure in order to capture audiences in the future as they adopt. And that's a long play. That's a long game play. And some of them have been building for 5, 6, 7 years before there was anything. And so that's the long game. And there are an array of other companies that recognize that engaging their audiences comes in many forms. And so when they come to us, they say, we want to build the next generation of a loyalty service. We want to build the next kind of gaming experience. We want to have the next, you name it. They know where they're going. Part of what we do at Polygon is to help them shape that, to engage with them in the activity of defining what a great user experience would be. And we see the array of experiences happening globally across virtually every industry, across virtually every enterprise. And so the value that we can offer is helping them shape those ideas. But ultimately, many are coming to us with a formed concept. And our job is to help them bring that to life. And sorry, your follow-up was what?
I think you pulled on an even more interesting thread, so we can discard that for now. But I'm actually curious, when you think about how one of these units sells to their larger conglomerate, what do you think is the top level reason that they want to build on crypto, right? I think for a very long time, people got really hung up and hamstringed by the sort of transactions per second that certain layers of infrastructure had as throughput. Now I think with a lot of what you guys have built, that discussion's gone out the window. But for gaming, for instance, is it about, say, disintermediating an app store, right? Because in today's day and age, mobile games generally monetize through, say, a freemium model, in-app purchases. You have an app store, whether it's Google, Apple, Samsung, et cetera, taking 30%. If you're building payment rails on Polygon, you can disintermediate that. So is it sort of an economic reason? Is it just about building a net new application that wasn't possible before? I know that's for gaming. Sandeep, I'm curious for your take on that innovation more broadly in other sectors.
Yeah. I mean, I would actually say that, and that's my feeling. Maybe Mike is in more deeper discussions. But what I see in the top management, like you asked this very relevant question, that what do they really sell to their conglomerate? Like, what are they selling to the top leadership? And I think this, the answer that I could come up with for myself is basically this whole innovation DNA. Like the top leadership, even if they don't understand depth of Web3, they just know that, okay, this is the next big thing and we need to experiment that. Like yesterday, we were in a dinner with one of the OGs of gaming industry, not only in Korea, but like worldwide OG. and and he's very clear like that this is the next big thing in gaming, and we need to crack that. So they have like I think 300 people team only dedicated on Web3 gaming and finding these use cases. And this is the interesting part what I'm trying to say here, that like the leadership is okay to not know that what exactly or where exactly we are going into, not having a very high or very long term like this is what we are going to do and all that, like thesis based thing, but more like okay, this technology looks like this is going to be the next innovation center point of the technology region, and this might push like revenues and all that. Like also things are driven by revenues, and this might push revenue in some of the areas, new areas of revenues and all that, and that's why they are trying to crack. So why I like this model is that in many, let's say, Western geographies, like leadership will spend like 2-3 years to kind of analyze and think that okay, we want to know where exactly it will go, how will it make money, everything, and then they will take some step, and then still they have to go through this iterative process. Whereas here, leadership is like, this makes sense, this is picking up a lot of traction, let's start doing it, let's play iteratively, do something small, then keep iterating on top of that, which is the innovation DNA. I feel that is there in the Korean companies, and that's why you see the electronics, VR, so many things like they are so far ahead of everybody else, and this is going to be the same situation in Web3 also.
I'll share one by analogy, one thought. When I was back at Electronic Arts, I helped create our subscription business. And externally, I think many people felt as though that was a play for EA to try to generate more revenue, because that's why people build subscription businesses. Underneath it, though, however, and I think we've told that story when I was back at EA better since, it was really about helping people play more games, helping people engage more with their friends, helping people. It was really about community. And when I see from, and maybe this is a build on Sandeep's point, what we see from the vast majority of companies that are interacting with us who are legitimately engaging in blockchain and Web3 experiences is that their aspiration is the same. It's really about driving new forms of engagement, about creating networks and community. And yes, there is a commercial aspect, just like a subscription drives revenue. Blockchain businesses, Web3 businesses also drive revenue, but the goal isn't purely to drive economic value. It's economic value plus this idea of community and engagement, and that's when you get the best. That's when you get the best out of what we're trying to create here together.
Yeah, and I think you're bringing up some really interesting points in terms of what it takes to build a network with this varying set of stakeholders. I think we've mostly talked about kind of the, call it, executive layer and the builder layer, but let's think about users for a second too. When you look at the needs and desires of an enterprise, they may be really happy and excited by the fact that you can censor certain types of content, right? Take out bad transactions, bad images, bad text, etc. On the flip side, there's a set of users who have a really, really crypto-native ethos and hate that centralization and that censorship potential. How do you think about these trade-offs? Are there sort of any particular ones that have caused a lot of friction in the wild? And how do you carry that forward in building a network?
Yeah, so for the users, like, okay, your question is like more from the Polygon side of things, or basically, yeah. So, I mean, at Polygon, like we always, think like this is not like a 0 or 1 thing. Like users are right now in Web2, and you give them a step change and they go to, like, I'm talking about mainstream users, like you give them a step change and they go to the Web3 part. Like it's not going to happen for large amount of users. They need this gradual process or gradual flow of user experiences from Web 2 to Web 3, and that's why, like for example, on meta transactions, like we adopted meta transactions, like one of the first ones in adopting that.
And Sandeep, for those unfamiliar in the audience, can you share what meta transactions are?
Meta transaction is basically, as a user, you simply do you simply provide your signature, using the wallet, whatever wallet you are using, and you don't add the gas fees on that. Like there is a gas layer which adds the gas fees. Similarly, now with Polygon CDK, which is our stack to launch like ZK, blockchains or app chains, we are going to enable features, and already many partners are working on them. With these zero gas fees transactions, like you don't even need to add, because these are single sequencer, let's say ZK rollups, and there you can actually just do your Web3 DOS attack protection, and you take the transactions which are coming from the trusted sources and things like that. So that will also enable like large number of transactions on these networks. And similarly, like your Web3 auth kind of use cases where you sign up with your email, you sign up with your phone, all these kind of tooling is very heavily available on Polygon. That is also one of the reasons so many builders keep building on Polygon, like you see, because they find everything in one place, and then from there they can start launching their user experiences, which feel similar to Web3. And I am a big proponent of, in these user experiences, you always have like advanced settings. Like if you have gone through Reddit's experience, for example, which is like very, super easy experience for the users, and it's a non-custodial wallet, but you can actually go into the advanced settings, move it out into your own self-custody wallet, and all those features are there. So that's how I see it. Like provide users the similar kind of Web2 experience, but for the more savvy users, give them an advanced setting kind of option where they can do full custody.
Yeah, and maybe I can help kind of refine on the question, because I think that in the case of, say, Reddit, where it's digital collectibles, there's less of kind of a content moderation issue. I think, right, the content in question would have been on Reddit itself, which is centralized. They have, sort of community standards and controls in place. But if we're talking about, say, a game built on Polygon, UGC, user-generated content, is typically a huge part of gaming. If certain pieces of that content are actually stored on chain, it could be very difficult to censor and remove them. And you may reach a tension where you have a studio that wants to have, rightfully so, some level of control over the content that shows in the game, but then you may have users say, well, if you can take content out and you can remove data from the chain, it's not truly decentralized. Yep. How do you think about that tension, Mike?
I'll offer a thought here.
Yep, sure.
I think our foundational values at Polygon are those of Web3, which are openness, privacy, transparency. I mean, those are the things, that's the way in which we live, and we build technology to support those values. But ultimately, the end user of that, not the end user, consumer user, but the end user being the project building on technology, ultimately they make decisions as to how they want to utilize this tech. And I think, as Sandeep said, there's an evolution that occurs here. When you're talking about a monster conglomerate who's entering into this space, move away from their current business model and way of working creates anxiety. And I think that there's this evolution towards this new model, which will happen. And our job is to try to enable it. So the Reddits of the world, the Nexons of the world, the Starbucks of the world, they're all at a different place. And then you go all the way through to native Web3 builders. They're all at a different place in that evolution. And I think if we stay true as an industry, as a company, to the values, we can help them understand why this idea of openness and privacy and transparency are good for end users, and ultimately end users will decide where they want to spend their time. And that's also part of the ethos of Web3. So we're all in this evolutionary phase and at different points in that cycle.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really healthy view to have as an infrastructure provider, right? It's ultimately about what value can be delivered to end users. And these partnerships are partnering with you because they believe that they see that through line. So go ahead, Sandeep.
Yeah. I mean, also I wanted to add that, as infrastructure builders, like as Mike said, that we have like, while building infrastructure, we follow like full Web3 ethos and, values. But the infrastructure is built in a way where, as an app builder, you can take your own calls. Like, we don't enforce that, oh, if you are doing this, only then you should build on Polygon and things like that. Like, it's very open, and developers build their own, destiny as per their own constraints, environmental constraints, what stage they are and all that. And, in such scenarios, one other part I feel is that as of now, it feels like the major use case of crypto still, like, you can foresee that this is on the financial side of things, like where you are storing value. We are creating this new internet, we call it like internet or Web 3.0. This is basically primarily about value. And all of the other things that you said, that, user generated content and all that, like, which even if it's moderated is fine, but as far as it is, it is approved content on a platform, and that value is codified on this, like, censorship resistant platform, and users own their assets, because these become valuable assets very fast, and users own them fully. I think that's stage one, game one for Web3, and that's what we value more.
Well, speaking of stage one, I think you guys have some pretty exciting developments coming up with the new Polygon 2.0. Obviously, one thing that's been really prominent in the news is the renaming of the token to POL. I think that there have been some really interesting criticisms out there that one major reason to change a token's name is to sort of rejigger and eliminate the prior price history. I think we've seen some other projects in DeFi and crypto broadly do this. I'm sure there's a lot more to it than that. What are skeptics missing when they think about it that way?
See, like, when we rebranded from Matic Network to Polygon, like in 2021, and that time only we had said that this will be, put in effect. And this basically is a long process. Even now, like, we have been planning this process for 1 year, and it's going to take 1 year. This is a massive exercise because, Matic is a very distributed, token which is used by so many applications used in DeFi and so many other places. So, like all these things, like, this history and all that, this is all crypto trader world, and, they can keep doing that stuff. But, like, we as a technology platform, we are building for next, decades to come. And we cannot have these, like, trading related, shenanigans affect our technical and long-term decisions. So, like, this is nothing related to that. And this is more related to where we want to go with, because the POL token, as you said, Polygon 2.0, like Matic Network was a single network plasma chain, when it started as. Now, like, Polygon has already, you can see that Polygon is a multi-chain environment now, multiple app chains, plus we have two main chains, like, which is Polygon POS, which is, right now is a side chain, but in, converting into a Validium, fully Ethereum secured. Then you have ZK EVM, which is the world's, like, first and most mature and advanced, ZK roll-up, which secures, like, which is fully secured by Ethereum. And then multiple other chains, app chains, as I'm saying. So this is a multi-chain environment, and now POL token has to, secure not only a lot of these app chains, but also this interoperability layer, between these chains. So this mechanics and this upgrade is basically focused on that how does the POL token, which is like the upgraded version of Matic, is not a new token, can service this multi-chain interoperable environment. And that's pretty much is Polygon 2.0, where, we talk about this multi-chain environment. It should have, like, the way we have built, like, we recently launched Polygon CDK, where anybody can launch their own ZK chains, ZK, like Ethereum secured ZK rollups or Validiums, but then, and then effectively providing infinite scalability. Like, if you need 100 chains, apps, 100 apps can build their own chains. You can have 1,000 chains, even 1,000,000 chains. This architecture still scales. And that's why it has got a lot of critical acclaim also, that, many people, like good high-level researchers, which I respect, have said that, this looks like kind of the end-game-ish kind of architecture, whether it's Polygon or somebody else. But whatever protocol you will see will end up becoming this, transaction layer or app layer of Web3. You will see something similar what we have proposed in Polygon 2.0. And so infinite scalability, but you can have hundreds of these chains, but the liquidity gets fragmented. And as I said, that we are building this Web 3.0 is essentially internet of value, and that value starts getting fragmented. What you need is seamless movement of value and interoperability of value across these chains. And for that, like, there's this interop platform or the ZK-based interop system that we have proposed, which allows these chains to be almost like, feel like one single infinitely growing block space, right? You could have like this whole network could have million or infinitely growing TPS, and you can add more and more capacity as and when needed, which is very similar to how it works in internet today, like Web2.
Yeah, and I think that string of thought brings up a really interesting question I think a lot about as a venture capitalist, which is when a lot of your innovation is highly technical and very thoughtful and really, really interesting in terms of the innovation, how do you effectively message that to a Web2 institution, right? If you think about kind of the old world, non-crypto, if you're a security company or a SaaS company doing something complicated, there's often a concept of sort of category creation, where you're coining new terminology that helps explain and helps people build a mental model for what you're doing. How have you been thinking about that so far with respect to Polygon, and are there even terms that you've sort of coined and begun to do that category creation process with?
Yeah. I mean, I think what Sandeep just described as Polygon 2.0 is that foundational story. And that is, I think that's understandable to the vast majority of projects that we work with. This idea of networks and network effects, and any company building an application that desires to attract users, and the more users, the better, and that those users need to interact with other users inside of a multitude of different networks. That definition, that description is what I think is how we talk about this. And that's not entirely dissimilar from how maybe Web2 companies might think about building networks around whatever they provide as value to their end user. So Polygon 2.0 is that strategy. We talk about it in the terms of networks and network effects. And the vast majority of enterprises that work with us understand the value of connecting to their users that live in the wider ecosystem, and how to make those users interact with other users. At the very core, that's what we're trying to help accomplish in a much more open, transparent, private, all those Web3 ethos bits that create a new form of engagement, a new form of value that is additive to their existing businesses.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, like I want to say that your question is how do we do this for enterprises? The first answer is like, for enterprises, it's much easier because they are much more thoughtful and not driven by narratives. They see what is working and they do their deep analysis. Whereas like the problem with this narrative is in the Web3 developers and Web3 audiences, because they are all driven by narratives. Like this is so painful to me. Like when many of the like I don't want to name, but many of the protocols and all that, they will see like very minimal activity happening over there. One or two things happen here and there, and they are able to meme it well. They are able to make the narrative around it, and then everybody's like, oh, this is. And whereas like Polygon, like we like announce those kind of things like 100 in a month, right? Not like 100. So this narrative and all that stuff, like with Web2 and enterprises and large companies, is much better, where there are thoughtful, strategic thought process compared to, let's say, Web3 audiences and builders. So that is one part. And that's why, like, it's more painful because, again, like enterprises, like I see this whole, Web3 adoption space as 4 main categories. Like one is DeFi, then you have NFTs, like, niche NFTs, PFP and art and stuff. And you have then gaming, and then these brands, right? And of course, like there are other sections like app chains and all that. But if you see, like on DeFi, we still continue to be the top 3 player. And NFTs, like we recently became rank 2 after Ethereum only. And brands, there is absolutely nobody who can compare, like, what kind of adoption Polygon has seen. And gaming, like it's like not even a question. It's like orders of magnitude bigger than that. So the other 2 sections, like, gaming and enterprises, we don't face that much of problem with narrative. But on the Web2, like, on this, DeFi and NFTs, where the builders are also driven by narratives instead of the real facts, that's where, like, it's slightly more harder. And I'm not sure, like, we have done till now a very good job of late recently to have that narrative around. And we should be doing more work on that.
Well, cool. That was a really fun, look under the hood in terms of Polygon go-to-market. You guys have had incredible success. So let's close out on one final question, because I think we're running out of time here. There's obviously lots of discussion about crypto gaming. what genre of crypto gaming do you think will be the first to have a game that gets to 100 million monthly active users?
A game that is fun to play. And I think when it comes down to it all, what users are looking for are things that add value to their life and that they want to spend time in and spend time with others and have social connections. That's what will lead. And so it's not a question of is it a crypto game or is it a mainstream Web2 game or is it some kind of hybridized Web 2.5 game or whatever word we want to put on it. I think it's a game that a game company builds because they think about the end user and the value that it offers to them. That's what will end up driving it. And I think we're going to start, I think Korea actually might be the place where we see some of the first examples of multi-100 million, registered user, massive MAU, DAU games because they're thinking about it in that way.
Cool.
Right now, I'm thinking of some apps with 1 million daily active users, not 100 million daily active users. If that happens, Web3 has made it. We will think about Web3 making it.
All right. Well, thank you, Sandeep. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.